coach? Oh, good Lord. This doesn't happen very often with a star quarterback. There's a clear leader. There is deference. By the way, the Saints have had one of these this year. The Niners, who don't have a star quarterback right now, right, because Garoppolo's not a lot of practice. The Giants have had one of these. It happens to good teams, too. But what you see, when you lack leadership, you have workplace meltdowns. I've had a couple in my career. The office, kind of blows up. It's not the employee's fault. It's not my coworker's fault. It's not my fault. It's a management issue. When you have a star quarterback, first of all, the offense usually controls practice. The bad spurts are short. The good spurts are long. And the star quarterback, again, has that authority where you don't get into that stuff when you have a star quarterback very often. When you don't have a star quarterback and you have a bad quarterback, you have to repeat stuff. Coaches get snarkier. Coaches get impatient. Players get impatient. Listen, it's August 9th, right? Like everybody wants to be very optimistic, but wide receivers, tight ends, running backs, offensive linemen, you can't fool professional football players. You can't fool professional athletes. Oftentimes, joy is my witness, I'll bring pro athletes, pro football players on the set, and I'll ask them, as a veteran player, when you see a rookie come into camp, how many practices does it take before you are like, guy can play, guy can't play? Almost to a player, they're like, yeah, 2 practices. Well, Daniel Jones been there a few years now, and he's not very good, right? And you can't fool the players, and they're getting frustrated, and offense is getting manhandled. Giants have a pretty good defensive front, and this is what happens. It spirals out of control. So you don't have a star player, and everybody in the building knows that at the most important position. Or my crazy idea could solve some of this. Bring in Jimmy Garoppolo. Colin, we don't have cap space. Figure it out. The Rams always do. Figure it out. The bad teams, the Bears, can never figure out the cap. The good teams, the Saints and the Rams, always do. Figure it out. Jimmy Garoppolo's been to Super Bowls. All the players know it. Jimmy Garoppolo's won 70% of his starts. He just beat Aaron Rodgers at Lambeau. Is Jimmy Garoppolo Josh Allen? No, he's not, but he wins a lot of football games and a lot of big football games that the Giants watch on TV because their season was really over in week 9. It's August 9th. It's melting down. I do not believe this would be happening if Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes were quarterbacks for the New York Giants. When you're lacking leadership, it becomes finger pointing. You put Jimmy Garoppolo in there, and if you struggle with Jimmy G, guys got to point fingers at themselves. Guys got to look in the mirror. That guy's won. That guy elevated Deebo Samuel. That guy helped make George Kittle a Pro Bowler. That guy beat Aaron Rodgers. That guy gives the Rams trouble. Maybe it's us. So when you get quarterback right, this is why I've never had a problem for like the Niners rolling the dice and giving up 3 picks for Trey Lance. It's a lot, but if you get it right, you're set for 12 years. I mean, I remember years ago when Washington drafted RG3 in the first pick and they drafted Kirk Cousins in the 4th round and they gave up a ton of picks and everybody freaked out. They won a division. Despite all that, despite RG3 not really working out, giving up all those picks, they won a division a few years later, I believe. They were competitive. You can give up. The Rams don't even have a first-round pick. When's the last time the Rams had one? If you get the quarterback right, it smooths out practice. It smooths out arguments. It shortens crises. Everything is easier. And right now, you got coaches fighting, players fighting, because there's no deference. There's no star. The ugly moments in practice last longer. And the idea that Daniel Jones is, even with this smart new coaching staff, is going to suddenly become an accurate thrower of the football, I do not buy it. Years ago, you gave a quarterback 3 full seasons. Years ago, you didn't have all these 7-on-7 camps. Years ago, you didn't have all these summer workouts. Kids didn't have quarterback mentors and coaches. So I'll give a guy, my feeling is, if I get a year of you, by the 2nd year, Thanksgiving, I've made a decision. I don't need to go public with it, but I've sat down with my GM, my scouts, and my coaches, and I'm like, he's the guy or he's not the guy. It took us 2 hours in Justin Herbert's first start to figure out he was the guy. 2 hours. Remember that? They walked up to him right before the game against the Chiefs. The Chiefs, Mahomes, they said, hey, Tyrod Taylor had a medical problem. Can you start? By halftime, we were all like, whoa, broken play. Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray first start. Whoa, guy can play. Joe Burrow, second start. Doesn't take that long. In 2022, second year Thanksgiving, we know now what it is, and what it is a problem. It is a problem. So you think that Jimmy G thing doesn't make any sense? Sticking with this, doesn't make any sense. All right. So speaking of New York, you guys think I lean to California on my show? We're talking Brooklyn now. So yesterday, I think it was at the end of our show, we had a real moment. So Kevin Durant sat down, to his credit, sat down with the owner, which I like. He sat down with the owner of the Brooklyn Nets, Joe Tsai, and he said, hey, I want to get rid of Steve Nash as the GM or trade me. So Shams came out, Joe Tsai, Kevin Durant's like, listen, Sean Marks, the GM, Steve Nash have to go or trade me. And then the owner came out a little bit later and said, our front office and coaching staff have my support. So now, what's the golden rule on this show when stories come out? Whenever there's a breaking story, you've heard this, anybody listening to me for 20 years, I always go to the same thing. Who wanted this story out? I don't think the owner wanted this story out. I don't think Sean Marks and Steve Nash wanted out that Kevin Durant doesn't think they're any good. Kevin Durant's side wanted this out. Why? Because he wants out, and there was no movement in the trade market, and there's no movement because Miami wants him and Boston wants him. But the GM of Brooklyn's asking for a boatload. And so the fastest way to get fired or traded in any job is to call out your owner or call out your boss publicly. So Kevin calls out his boss and his coach, and that will speed things up. They're willing now to take less. You call out your GM, you call out your coach, it gets toxic. Now they'll get him out of the building. What it shows you is Kevin Durant really wants out. He wants out. They couldn't make a trade partner, not because people don't want Kevin. Miami wants him. Boston wants him. Phoenix wanted him. But they were holding firm on, 7 picks and 5 players. So to me, I think sometimes you got to cut your losses. I'd go to Boston. If you gave me Jaylen Brown, a very, very good player, and I could put Jaylen Brown, Kyrie Irving, Ben Simmons, Royce O'Neal, Joe Harris, Patty Mills on the floor next year, that's a playoff team. If Ben Simmons plays, and I think he will, that's a playoff team. Well, that's all you were with Kevin Durant. What were you with Kevin Durant? 2 first-round exits and a second-round exit. So to me, if you get Jaylen Brown and a bench player from the Celtics, forget about the draft picks, they're not going to play for years. If you gave me Jaylen Brown, who, by the way, is a great defensive player, so is Ben Simmons. Kyrie's not. If you gave me Jaylen Brown, Ben Simmons, Kyrie Irving, Royce O'Neal, Joe Harris, Patty Mills, that's a playoff team. Well, that's all you've been with Kevin Durant. You keep talking about ceiling stuff with Kevin Durant. All you've been is a first and second round out team. So what I'm not going to do is blow up my front office again. You think the best coaches are available? Well, what coach is available now? The good guys are off the market. Ty Lue's not leaving the Clippers to go to this mess. So you're not going to get a great coach. You're not going to get a great GM. Kevin's 34. Kevin's hurt a lot. Kevin wasn't happy with Steve Kerr, great coach. Kevin isn't happy with Billy Donovan, who I thought's at least a good coach. And he wasn't happy with Steve Nash, who appears to be a little overwhelmed, but is a smart guy. I know him, could get better, like all of us. Pretty learned, pretty smart, play the game, could get better. Jason Kidd, by the way, is a better coach today than he was when he first came in. Why? Jason's smart. He's been around the league. Jason Kidd was a little overwhelmed first year or two. Jason Kidd got better as a coach. Ty Lue today is probably better when he first became a coach. I think Steve Nash will get better as a coach. Smart guy. So, but the story here is Kevin wanted this puppy out. Kevin wants out. This idea he'll come back, he'll get along. You put this out, you want to kind of embarrass or humiliate your boss, and so your boss says, forget it, get him out of the building, I'm ticked off. And so somebody's going to get Kevin Durant. My takeaway now is Kyrie's probably going to come back. He has no market, but Kevin's probably going to force their hand, and he'll be somewhere, and it'll be very exciting. If you put Kevin Durant in Miami with most of that crew, it feels like a championship-level team. I think Kevin Durant with Jason Tatum and Marcus Smart and Robert Williams, to me, feels like potentially a championship team. That's better for the NBA. He's not going to go to a bad team. And I don't think Brooklyn is terrible if they move off him and get Jaylen Brown, a draft pick or two, and a bench player. They got players. But, I mean, what are you really giving up? He couldn't get you past the second round. So if you get into the playoffs and get bounced in the first round, that's what you've been, mostly with Kevin Durant. All right, speaking of melting down, holy moly, what a mess with the Patriots yesterday. I will say this. One of the things I've always liked, I have probably, I don't want to mention them because I don't want to, there's 5 or 6 people in this country, maybe 6 or 7 people in this country that do local radio or TV that I have great admiration for. I think they're very good. They all have one thing in common, is that they're willing to call out local teams. The worst thing in the world is when you get local people and local bloggers and they're just pom-pom wavers. No respect for that. But there are people all over the country through the years that have been willing to club their local team, and I have great respect for that because that's hard to do. You know, you go to the grocery store and you see the fans. You go out to a restaurant, you see the fans. They know who you are. They watch. So I always like when local reporters are willing to get, hate mail from local fans. It's easy for me to come up here and take shots at people because I don't live in these cities. But it's harder when you're local. I got death threats in Las Vegas when I was critical of Tark. I got death threats. And, in a weird way, it's sort of a badge of honor. Like, okay, I'm willing to say, things that I thought were true at the time, and they mostly were. So, here we go in Foxborough, and it wasn't one reporter. It was like all of them crushing Belichick. All right, 2023, I haven't checked the stock market today.